When I was growing up, I couldn't really come out to my mom and say, "Hey, Mom, I'm gay." Actually, the way my mom found out is there was a guy I was with. I was 13, and he was like 35.
What?
Wow. And I told him I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. And my mom and her husband owned a restaurant. And he came in the middle of rush hour and said, "I'm gay, and I had an affair with your son." And I'm like 13 years old, and my mom's like, "What?"
What's going on, everyone? It's your host, Miguel Chavez. Got my co-host, David Cano.
Hey there, how's it going, guys? We got a great show for you today.
Big guy.
We got a great show for you guys today.
Did you get a new computer?
No, that's the same computer.
Oh, did you switch the case?
I got the new case, yeah.
Wow.
Looks dope, huh?
That is nice. Heck
His
yeah.
son, actually, Michael, I was at his house, and Michael switched all the guts out and put in that new one. Shout out to Michael Gualtieri. If you need a PC built or something, he will definitely help you out. I want to thank you for coming, guys. We got Daniel Monreal. Thanks again, bro, for being on another episode. I promise I will pay you one day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Paul Gualtieri. I've known this man for most of my life. I was about 13, 12 years old when I first met him and his family. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for
So
being
if
here.
you are enjoying this YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe, hit that like button. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, go ahead and follow us, give us a good rating. And if you are also a reoccurring listener and you want to support the podcast, you can go ahead and hit that link right to the right on Spotify to support and donate. Thank you.
So it's February, the month of love, and exactly, well, it was a year ago when we did that one skit where we went out on the streets and we interviewed people for Valentine's Day, and we interviewed Paul.
Yeah.
And
a staged interview.
Yeah.
Staged. Yeah. Yeah. Paul, I want to start from the beginning. I know a lot of people don't know you. So if you could just kind of just give us a breakdown of where you're from, what your childhood was like growing up, and then we can get into it.
Okay. So I'm originally from Rhode Island, and I lived there till I was about 10. And then at around the age 10, my mom and I moved to Palm Springs, California. And then from there, I moved. At 13, I took off and I moved to Hollywood.
By yourself?
By myself. I remember going to the local truck stop and I hitchhiked a ride. I had all my stuff in the backpack because I wanted to go party and live it up. So I went to Hollywood, and so I lived there till I was about 20. And when I was 20, I moved to Tucson. So that was 1986.
Wow.
So part of my childhood, I didn't really live with my mom that much. I was in, like, I guess you could call them foster homes, or I lived at boarding schools. At one time, I lived in a military school. And
But you ran away from home when you were 13?
my mom told me, if you don't like the rules, there's the door.
Oh, wow.
And
So
she didn't stop you?
No. Unfortunately, I was sort of like an inconvenience. My mom was a single mom. And when we lived in the East Coast, being a single mom without a husband was like really frowned on. So I think that's part of the reasons why we moved to the West Coast, because it was a little bit more acceptable, or it wasn't looked down on that much, you know?
Yeah.
But I was really, for the longest time, it was an inconvenience. So I dealt with a lot of rejection growing up, and, you know, I would be home, but I would still feel like my mom didn't really want me there. So I think that just played out psychologically in the decisions I made as I got older, you know, because no kid wants to be pushed aside by their parents, you know.
Yeah.
So I can remember, and, you know, I say this because there's probably a lot of people out there in our audience that have dealt with this or know somebody that's dealt with this. So I can remember being as young as 3 or 4 years old and being sexually violated.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, I'm a young kid. I didn't really know. I thought it was strange. I mean, I've done a lot of drugs and stuff, so the exactly what happened might be a little bit foggy, But I can remember feeling odd, like this is weird. What is this? It was actually my babysitter. It was a girl, and I'm like, what is this girl doing? And it was like,
Yeah, something's not right.
Yeah, exactly. So as I grew, I mean, I didn't say nothing to anybody. I just, okay, whatever, And so when I went into private school, so this was boarding school. When I say private
What
school,
year was this?
Oh, this had to be, I would say, the mid-'70s.
Okay.
I was in third grade. So how old is a third grader?
Well, like
8
years old.
Yeah. So the first violation had probably happened when I was about 4. So now I'm in boarding school, and a situation arose, and something happened to me again. And this time it was with a guy. And
In school?
in the boarding school, because you remember it's a boarding school.
Yeah.
So you don't go home; you sleep there at night, and
You have
I'm stuck.
dorms
And
and
I'm
all
stuck on the weekends. So I'm wandering around. I just happened to wander in to the wrong place at the wrong time, and then something happened. And so then I went to military school, and again I'm left there by myself. And all the time I'm rejected.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like my mom loves me. All my friends have got fathers, and so I don't know what's going on. I've got no direction. Young kids need direction. They really need to be told, hey, this is the way you should go. And so I didn't have any of that.
Right.
So any kind of attention that was given to me that would really involve me was sexual. So then I just started thinking, I'm like, okay, so this happened again in military school. Then it happened again. And then I can remember one time I'm there over the weekend, and I think it was the music teacher. He goes, well, you could just stay with me, and things happened again. And so then I get out of private school, I get out of military school, boarding school, and I'm getting ready to go back with my mom. By this time...
How old are you at this time?
Probably about 9.
So by the time...
9 or 10,
By
somewhere
the time
around
you were
there.
9 or 10, how many times
I
has
would
it
say at
happened?
least a half a dozen times.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, wow. So
And they were always from
Gosh,
different
man.
people.
So, dude, the devil, man, was just
Yeah.
attacking your childhood.
Yeah. So I don't really
Oh, my
know
gosh.
what the
So
devil
by the
was.
time you're 9, your mind is, I mean, you don't even know what to think.
Yeah, I didn't know what to
So
think.
so at that point, I mean, did you like try to fight these people off, or what did you do?
Well, I think after the second or third time, it seemed like any kind of special attention I would get, that was connected to it.
Okay.
So I don't want to say I would welcome it, but if it happened, hey, it happened. Because this is what my life was producing, So, so when we moved to California to Palm Springs, and Palm Springs, there is a large population of homosexuality, and that's where I just really started to delve into. So instead of me being the one being abused, then I started looking for it. And there would be a lot of older guys. I'd get attention. They would give me money. There'd be times I'd be hitchhiking or riding my bike. Guys would pick me up. They'd give me money. I was all by myself. So then that just continued to escalate, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And, I didn't know what or who I was, but all the attention I would get would be from a guy. I still sort of had an attraction to girls. But I can remember a couple of times, like, man, this girl is really pretty. And they would look at me and just laugh in my face, So I'm like, there goes the rejection. This group of people is accepting, and they go out of their way. They buy me food.
These men,
yeah, I'm sorry,
Wow.
yeah. So...
Did you ever at all in your childhood or when you were growing up, did you ever feel attracted to girls or women?
I did somewhat. I mean, I don't believe that when I was born, I was like, hey, I'm going to like guys. I think something developed over my life. You know, as a child, things developed because of the.
I think life didn't really give you time to even be able to develop feelings for girls, because by the time you're 9 years old, it's happened half a dozen times. So, do you think that?
Yeah, I think that. And then also, without getting into too much detail, there are 2 generations in my family that have dealt with rape. So I think that.
Wow.
So there's generational curses.
Yep.
There's things that happen,
Definitely.
which can be broken if somebody just makes a decision and
Yep.
turns to God,
Yeah.
you know.
But it hadn't
that
until-
there was already a seed.
Yeah.
So I think when people say, well, you know what, I was born gay, and I think in an essence that could be true. Because
That's a good
if
point.
there's
That's an
if
interesting
there's
way of putting it.
generational things that have happened down the road in the family, well, then you're good. You know, it's like if somebody has an alcoholic father, there's a good possibility that guy or that girl, the daughter or son, are gonna
Have
an inclination to drink.
Yep. Those
Not only do they
tendencies,
see
yeah.
their dad, you know, like give an
Yep.
example. I never knew my dad, and 2 years ago, I found out who he was. And I have a sister that's 3 years younger than me. And if I were to take my life as a young person, I could put it on her life as an older person, and they're identical. She lives in a van. I lived on the streets. She does drugs. She's sexually promiscuous. She's in and out of jail. So I look at that, I'm like, that's an old version of me.
Wow.
And it was because of my father. I never knew my dad. So that just validates.
How did you find your father?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that question.
Well, one of my sons did the Ancestry.com, got his DNA.
Really?
And
21 and me?
no,
23 and
23
and me.
Yeah. So he did the Ancestry.com and he showed it to me, and there was a name on there that I remember my mom mentioning that was my dad. So I was like, whoa. So then I got into it.
So you
and
just recognized the name?
Yeah, because I remember my mom saying a name, and you know, right before she passed away, I wanted to pry, you know, I wanted to pry to find out more, but you know, she's dying, and it just wasn't. I'm like, well, that's just the way it is, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't find out until after she passed away, and I really think that was God's grace, because there's just a lot of weight, you know, and you know, she doesn't really want me to know her past that much and in detail.
Yeah.
But so here's this guy, and the way he lived, he was very promiscuous. So I have 5 sisters, and there are 4 different moms.
Wow.
Wow.
You know, so you can see the pattern what I'm talking about
Yeah.
here. Yeah, so when I was about 13, we lived in Palm Springs, and I can remember, and I had mentioned this to you the other day, laying in my bed. I was all by myself, and I had just messed around with an older guy, and I remember laying in my bed, and I remember speaking out, I'm gay. And it was like something happened when I said that. And I don't know if it was just I accepted the fact that, hey, this is who I was, but there was just something that happened in my life, and it was like, this is the identity I had accepted, or maybe this was my demonic revelation that this is who I was. So from that point on, I ran from it. It was shortly after that I ran away.
So you came out to yourself at that moment.
Yeah.
So leading up to
Wow.
that moment and in your upbringing, was there any type of religion in your family with your mom? Any type of,
Yeah.
you know?
We were. I was raised Catholic, but I was a traditional American Catholic that would go to church on Easter and Christmas.
Okay.
You know, and
Yeah.
no put down if you're Catholic. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you know, that's what our family did. You know, but so from at that time at 13, shortly after that, is when I took off to Hollywood. So what I did was there was a guy that I was involved in. He was an older guy, and he took me to L.A. to introduce me to the party life, the homosexual party life. So I was so enthralled with it. I was like dancing, you know, I started doing coke, smoke a little weed, you know, so this was all new to me. So I was like, wow, that's probably what drew me or pressed me. I'm out of here, man. If I live with my mom's house, she's not going to let me get high. She's not going to let me drink. I remember one time coming home and I had smoked some weed and she's like, go sleep it off. You're high. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she goes, yes, you are. Go to bed and sleep it off. So I went and slept it off. Before I went to sleep, I ate a bunch of chips, but
she's like, you're not going to enjoy that high. Go to sleep.
Yeah. Let me get some food, Mom, first, please. But yeah, so at the age of 13 I took off, like I said. And at that point, there was just all kinds of things opened up to me.
But at that time, you did feel an attraction to men.
Yes,
though, right?
I did. Yeah.
But not so much towards women.
Not towards women at all. No. I was out there. It was almost like I turned a light switch on. Let's go.
So did you ever meet any girls or have any female friends?
Oh yeah, I had a lot of female friends.
But you never felt an attraction towards them.
No, there wasn't really that there. I can remember one time, and I don't want to go into too details. I'm like, okay, we got to switch this up. I invited a couple girls over. And I was living by USC, and I took care of this guy's place, and he had like a one room. I think it was like 100 square feet. Mm-hmm. And I would just crash in there. And so I had a couple of girlfriends that I knew that lived on Hollywood. They were prostitutes. So I was like, yeah, let's come over. We'll hang out. And in my mind, I'm like, hey, let's see if we can make something happen. Mm-hmm. But they brought a friend who was a guy, and I ended up messing around with the guy. And the girls took off, stole my car, and took off to L.A.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that's too much. Maybe you want to cut that out. But
no, that's good. See, we want the real stories because there's people out there that did the same thing or maybe said, hey, maybe I can force an attraction here, and you never know like who you're going to reach with your story.
Yeah.
So...
So from that point on, I just got involved, and it seemed like every other week there's some kind of new drama. I can remember living on just living on the streets, partying, sleeping abandoned. We'd find abandoned houses. We'd break in. We'd do drugs.
What kind of drugs were you guys doing?
Well, back then I did we smoked a lot of weed, and we did a lot of coke. Okay.
So
back then drugs were a little bit different. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the word pure would be the right word, but
it makes sense.
You could do the drugs with there would be some repercussions, but not as much as you would see today. Mm-hmm. It's just a whole different generation out there.
Would you say that they're more like the party type drug?
Yeah, I mean, some people like to do coke, and to me, I would do it and I'd fall asleep, man, after,
Yeah.
So now you're talking about late 70s, early 80s, right?
No, this would be 79, yeah, 79? So about 79, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so around that time.
I think I took off to...
We weren't even born then.
No.
That's when cocaine
crazy.
barely started creeping into the U.S.
From Colombia.
From Colombia.
Yeah, that's when it was coming from Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can remember...
Before the cartel started forming.
Yeah.
We'd always be like, you got to get the Peruvian. The one with, I think it had a little bit of blue in it or something. I can't remember, So I think one of the reasons what pushed me to Hollywood is it was known that there's gay people that live in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So I was around other people that felt the same way as I did. There was young guys my age, and there was actually one thing that was really big in the 80s was teenage nightclubs. So there was no alcohol.
Just
but
dancing.
There was teenagers that go in there and dance. And,
Yeah.
There was guys, I can remember, later on in my life, I started doing meth. I started snorting it, and that hurt too much.
You were snorting meth?
Snorting back then, we snorted meth. You couldn't smoke it.
Really?
Because they didn't have ice back then. It was either you snorted it or you shot it. So I can remember, now this is when the AIDS started coming out, and I remember one time, Santa Monica Boulevard, I saw this dude, he had a needle. I had some meth, so we just went into a random bathroom. We got a matchbook cover, so if you ever shot up, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We got a matchbook cover. We sharpened the tip of our needle, ran some cold water through it. He hit me, I hit him. AIDS is going around. People are dying, but that's what's so amazing about, or not amazing, but powerful about doing drugs, man, is you don't care. You just want to get high, man. You don't care about the repercussions.
You don't think about the long term.
You don't think about the long term at all, man. So let me just backtrack. So 13 years old, ran away, started doing coke, started smoking weed, and after a while, it's like we try different things, and after a while, they don't satisfy. So whether that's drugs or whether that's sex, that's different hobbies. There's adrenaline junkies out there. They do this, and then they jump into doing something else to get more of a fix. So that was sort of like my life. So I started off in homosexuality. I started off with some coke, with some weed, and then after a while, that didn't satisfy. So then I got involved in prostitution, male prostitution.
Really?
And did that for a while. And so at the age of 16... So I had been on the streets for 3 years and got involved in a bunch of, like I said, prostitution, lots of drugs. So at the age of 16, I found, I was with some friends of mine and we're walking up Hollywood Boulevard and I found so what we would do is we'd go to the phone booths and we'd try to get money out of them, and I found a stack of quarters. So I was like, I'm in the money, and then I found a little pamphlet. As a matter of fact, I still have that exact track.
Really?
And I've been saved now for coming on 35 years.
That's crazy.
So I lived on the streets for 4 more years until I got saved, but I still have kept that track. So there was a track, it was Somebody That Loves Me, and it was about this kid who got beat up. It was directed, his dad threw him out in the streets. But I remember finding that track on a phone booth. You guys know what phone booths are, right?
Yes.
That's a big box, right?
Yeah, big
with
box
the
with a
cell
little
phone
thing.
connected
Yeah,
to
the
it.
cell phone.
Cell
yeah.
phone.
That one over there in that picture where Corey Galindez is.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah. So I
I like that.
remember finding that track, but next to that track was a big stack of quarters. And I was like, we would go and we'd hit the change machine and try to get money out of it.
Yeah.
And then the newspaper machines, and try to get change. So I found that track. So I was with about 3 or 4 of my friends, and I'm back there reading the track. And God's just getting a hold of me. And I had no idea because I had no God at all in me at all.
So a track for those
That's
watching
powerful,
that don't
man.
understand what
A
that
chick
means.
track.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a flyer, right?
Yeah, it's like a little booklet, with a
Little
little
story, and then
Yeah.
at the
It's
end-
It's a comic book,
Yeah.
essentially, is what it is. And
Yeah.
it's like this.
They don't make those anymore, but
No,
I know
they do actually.
Oh, they do?
I actually
Yeah.
went to the original Chick Track publication place.
Oh, wow.
It's in California. I think it's in Santa Ana,
Some of
California.
I haven't
some
seen
of
those,
those
though. Yeah.
those comics on there are not graphic, but they're like detailed.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, like that looks like hell.
Like
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
So
that
where do you get a
bodies
hold of
and-
these, though? Because I remember
Well,
when
a
I
lot
was
of
a
them,
kid.
you can order them online, or like Christian bookstores, which is probably a thing of the past. I think there's one in Tucson.
Gospel
Like
supplies.
Gospel supplies.
Gospel
Yeah,
supplies,
They're on
yeah.
Broadway.
Is it on
Speedway.
Broadway now?
Speedway.
No,
It used
Broadway.
to be on Speedway. It's
Oh,
on
they moved it?
Broadway
Yeah.
now. They moved
No,
it.
Speedway was long time ago. Broadway, they opened it up right where the men's warehouse is.
Oh, okay.
All
I
that
got
stuff.
you. I got
Yeah,
you.
right there.
So let's just backtrack to a little cartoon pamphlet, and in there it was a Christian thing, and I was like, okay, whatever, I didn't really have any understanding about God or anything like that, and I wasn't interested, I was just because I got some money. But so after I read that, there was a little prayer at the end, and I prayed, and I remember all my friends that started walking up. They were
Wow.
probably a block away, and they were like, "Paul, come on!" And they're yelling, "Let's go, come on!" So I didn't realize, but I was crying after I read it. I had prayed a little prayer at the end,
The sinner's prayer.
the sinner's prayer, and
Oh, wow.
I was just like, but I felt different, and I didn't, Now that I'm adult, I can look back, and I've got more experience in life. I can identify what had happened.
Why do you think that you cried and that you had that experience, or why did you even want to say that prayer?
Well, because the track was about a kid being rejected, thrown on the streets. He died on the streets. I'm living on the streets. My mom didn't want me. I left home.
It's
so
your
it
life.
just-
It
It sort of
spoke to
just
you.
hit
Crazy,
me.
man.
Wow.
And I
That's
wasn't looking for
crazy,
that.
That
bro.
is crazy.
Gosh.
And but the reason I bring that up is to just talk a little bit about more what happened after that point. So from that point, I was right about 16. Meth came on the scene. So I remember doing some meth, and I was up for like 3 days. And I was like, forget Coke, man. Coke is really expensive, and I got to keep on doing it, and then I got to keep on doing it if I want to stay high. But man, meth, I could do a quarter, and I'd be up for 3 days. So then a friend of mine showed me about shooting up. So then pretty soon...
Shooting up meth.
Shooting up meth. So pretty soon we're doing quarter grams, half grams,
So you
one shot at a
So
time.
you prayed You know what I'm saying? Something happened there, but then just kind of life just moved on.
I had heard about there was this halfway house on the streets of Hollywood that would take street kids in, and it was a Christian organization. And my friend goes, yeah, if you go there, I heard they take all your jewelry and all your money and they take all your stuff. It's like a cult. And I'm like, well, forget that, man. I don't want that.
Was it Teen Challenge by any chance?
No. I think it was a place called Centrum, if I remember. I can't quite remember. I don't think it was connected to them. I don't even know if Teen Challenge was out in the 80s or not. I'm not really that sure. This was back in the 80s. So this was probably, around 81 or 82, somewhere around there.
I still wasn't born yet.
Yeah. We'll get up there, bro. Don't worry.
None of us were born yet.
But, so from that point on, from 13 to 16, my life was bad. But from 16 until 20, it got really bad to where I started shooting meth. So I just did things that were just so embarrassing. I can't even really talk. And I thank God that I don't really remember. I remember little bits and pieces of the things I got involved in. I mean, it was just debauch. It was like Sodom and Gomorrah stuff, man. And so I thank God that I was high that whole time because I don't really remember everything, man. So it doesn't plague my mind, now that I'm a different person and I don't want to live that way anymore,
What did they refer to meth to back then?
It was just crystal meth. That we just called it meth.
Just crystal meth?
Yeah, meth.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember much more.
They didn't have like a street slang for it back then?
Well, the group of people I hung out with, they would always say it, they would call it Mrs. Carrington from because how did that go? Because that show Dallas or something, there was somebody in there. Her name was Crystal Carrington. So they would call it. So that was like the street name. That's what the group I would hang out with.
Okay.
So it's like I don't think because it was a fairly new drug.
Okay.
But the stuff I started doing, it was rat poisoning, and they would extract the strychnine out of it.
Oh my God.
What the
That's
heck?
how we started doing it.
That's how you started doing meth?
That's the first. From what I
The first
understand,
batch?
I could be wrong. I need to be corrected.
Wow.
But the first type of meth, that's how it started.
Rat
out.
poison, and you
and
would
they extract the strychnine out of it.
Wow.
And then it was starting to be manufactured different ways. It's like now they manufacture things
Oh, yeah.
totally different. They're always trying to improve
Yeah.
on it, which just makes it worse for people. When
well,
they
maybe
see
you
it.
can
crazy,
sue
though,
who used to
that they
make
would-
it.
That's right, man.
You got a lawsuit on your
They're
hands. there.
probably
You make
already
some
dead.
money.
Because just around that same time is when cocaine started gaining traction in the U.S. In the U.S., both on the east,
Crack.
on the East Coast. Well,
Yeah.
crack
Well, that
was
was crack.
Epidemic.
Yeah,
crack.
crack was presented a little later when they started cooking it, but cocaine started making its not only from Pablo Escobar, but it started making its way through the Gulf, not through the Gulf, through Mexico, because the Caribbean and everything like that was shut down by the Bush administration back in those days. So
I think the
fact that
meth
there was
is really
meth-
something that was made in America.
Yeah,
It started
Yeah,
here.
'cause I was gonna say, yeah.
So it's America's original drug, methamphetamine.
It was truly organic then.
Yeah. So
It was more pure than
Made in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah. So I started
MAGA.
doing a lot of meth.
holy in America.
Make meth in
And
America
quite
again.
frankly, the meth is great.
Yeah. You guys are wonderful. I love you.
You're gonna love it. It's
The
beautiful.
meth is great.
Make meth. America great again.
Make meth great again.
Rat poison.
But yeah, so that was something new, and we're always looking for something new. I remember, so when I started shooting up, I remember there was times I didn't have anything, and I can remember one time, I don't know whose apartment when I was in, but I remember we were just jonesing to get high. So we're looking through this guy's medicine cabinet, open pill bottles. No, this was empty. So we got the bright idea of getting ice water and shooting it up in our veins.
What?
So we shot ice water and it would hit our brain. We're like, whoa. And then it would go
Oh, my
away.
God.
So we could have probably killed ourselves. I don't know. But
Did you feel the water traveling?
you
were
because-
shooting
because
up
it-
ice
because-
water?
because it was cold. So your temperature is hot. So you got ice
And it
water,
gives you a brain
and it's
freeze?
just going through, and you could feel it, man.
We should do that
Really?
on here. I mean, that's not a drug.
It's
I mean,
not.
We should try it.
babe. No, I was kidding. Babe, bring some
the
ice water.
syringes. Some ice water and syringes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
then I ended
crazy.
up meeting up with a guy who was my boyfriend, and I turned him on to a couple of deals. I got him some deals with some people selling. So then I ended up moving with him for probably, I lived with him for about maybe 6 months. But there was a safe, and I had all the meth I wanted. Anything I wanted, because I got the contacts. The agreement was, I'll live there. You and I are an item. I'll get your contacts. I just want all the drugs I can. So I can remember times, man, staying up for a couple of days, dropping a couple of hits of acid, trying to take the edge off, so drinking some vodka or something.
Well, so you were doing meth and acid?
Yeah.
Wait. So,
Dang, dude.
did you have any like crazy,
You stayed away
crazy
for like 3
acid
months.
trips?
Yeah,
My days.
the funniest thing
3
I can
months tripping,
remember
bro.
was we were all sitting around. We had like this housewarming party, and I had this old ratty briefcase, and I had all these dime bags. You know, when you're a meth,
Prepackaged?
you're a meth head. You're like, man, I'm gonna make these things perfect, man. They were perfectly
Yeah.
folded and they were scented. I think it probably took me a day to put everything in there. And I'm walking around, hey man, you want some weed? But by that time, everyone's just like, they're out of
Done.
it. So we're watching this MTV video. This is like maybe 2 years after MTV came out. So that's
Oh
how
my
old I
gosh.
am. So
When MTV was music television.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now it's a bunch of reality shows.
I remember the
and
first.
crap.
I remember the very first night it was on.
Oh,
Really?
Showed, man. Yep.
Wow.
Back in I think what 81, 82,
Or were they
somewhere
playing
around
like
there.
Twisted Sister and stuff
Twisted
like that?
Sister. I remember Madonna came on. We were like, whoa, she doesn't have a whole shirt on, and that wasn't something that you would see.
Yeah.
Wow,
You know?
that's crazy.
So then it just, but so we're at this party,
Yeah.
this housewarming party, and MTV came on, and there was this video. So by this time, I had already been up for probably about 4 days, for tweaking, and dropped a couple hits of acid.
Did you
So-
ever OD?
I did. I'll tell you about
okay. All right.
that. You would expect I would.
Yeah,
right?
You got
like-
so many
You're like,
stories.
are you
I'm
still
like,
alive? What's
gosh,
going on here,
yeah,
man?
Like,
We're gonna have to make like a part 2 and part
I think
3.
you
No,
were.
well-
I think you literally
We
were
can
awake.
keep going. We're plugged into the
You
computer,
were awake
bro.
from the time you were 13.
Yeah. I never slept. I think I've got like 6 hours in my teen years,
He was awake for like 7 years.
Okay, so what were you saying?
So I can remember watching this.
Hold on.
I remember watching. You had asked me if I had any trips, so I
Yeah,
remember
yeah, yeah.
watching a YouTube video, or not a YouTube, MTV,
Uh-huh.
and there was a video about people's faces changing, and their face was going in and out, and I swear it was coming out of the TV, man. And it's like those faces were right on top of me. And there was another time we were tweaking, and we're walking down the street, and there was this hot dog stand we would always go to, and across the street there was their competition, and they had this big thing of jalapenos. So me and my friend were like, hey, we know these were hot, so we just started eating them so we could trip on how bad they burned.
Wow.
So, and that was really bad. And I remember that, and that was years ago. So, but other than that, I
Wow.
never had any I didn't feel like Superman, like I wanted to jump out of a building or anything like that.
Wow.
Whenever I would tweak, I would just be by myself, man. I would talk to people. But I remember one time I had this little 3x5 note card. It was like a graph paper, and I sat in one spot on a 5-gallon bucket, and I just wrote little 3D boxes the whole time, just writing them. It was like 8 hours, and I actually, up to about 3 or 4 years ago, I still had that card. I was like, I got to save this. This ought to be good for something, man. So I did trip out a lot.
Wow, you were just in an 8-hour zone?
Yeah.
Dude, that's I can't fathom that. Like, that's a whole entire day.
When you're
When you're doing
frying on well, I know meth lasts a long time, but I know that when you're on LSD, that's a long time too.
Yeah.
So you were frying and tweaking at the same time.
Yeah.
That is insane.
So
I'm surprised you're not like a
Damn.
schizophrenic or anything.
So for those that are
ask
listening,
my wife. No, don't ask her, bro.
so those that are listening, tweaking is when you're on meth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And frying is when you're on LSD.
Acid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if those are terms used today, but
Yeah.
that's
yeah, I'm
what
sure. Yeah.
So
Wow.
but yeah, so I remember this.
I'm tripping out on your story right there.
I'm tweaking
I'm
right
tweaking
now.
right now.
I'm
Off
frying.
this Coke Zero.
Coke Zero.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
I
So
wish.
I remember
But I
this
don't
one
wish.
time I had already been up
You
for
speak
about
from the abundance of your heart.
You said I wish.
You can't turn that against me.
Hey, you said that to me earlier.
But it was true.
Oh.
Yours was true. Mine's not.
Okay.
But I remember the vow of silence there for a minute. Right?
Yeah.
I remember one time I had been up for like 10 days doing meth nonstop, just up. And I was like, I started feeling like I was coming down. And I remember, and it's crazy because there's not a lot of things I remember, but I remember this like it happened the other day.
10 days. How old were you?
At that time, I was probably 18.
Wow.
I weighed 120 pounds. So I've gained a little bit of weight since then.
Yeah.
Thanks to my wife. So I can remember I'm in my bathroom and I fixed my needle up, my rig up, and I shot myself. And I remember standing in front of the mirror looking at myself. And the last thing I remember is going like this. And then I woke up a couple days later.
Your body just shut down?
I just shut down. Well, I was up for 10 days. And
Wait,
then I did
you
another.
shot yourself up with what? With meth?
Yeah.
More meth?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
Because you were trying to stay?
well, I was just
up?
trying to stay up, man, because I was high. I mean, if you're up that long tweaking, I mean, you're not thinking right.
I've never heard of anyone being up for 10 days.
Well, you got to understand, I had an abundant supply.
I think
All I had to do was open the safe, man.
I spoke to Corey. He said, I want to say it was over 10 days. That
Well,
he
I
was,
think
I think
that-
I remember hearing
Like
him say
14
that.
days.
Yeah.
Well, I
Corey
think
Galindez.
that when you're
Really?
Yeah.
when you're that drugged up, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
bro.
no.
It's insane.
No, but when you're drugged up, you're gonna nod off. You know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna, but you're not gonna remember.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because the body, the human body can't function. You're gonna crash. You know, if
Yeah.
it's 10 days and stuff like that. So you might
Yeah.
might have been awake, but I mean, like you said, you thank God that you were high because there's a lot of
Yeah.
I didn't do as much as you did, but there's blocks of time where I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like nothing. Like it jumped from being 9 o'clock to like 7 a.m. and I'm just like, what the heck happened the last?
Yeah, well, I
8 hours?
have like 6 month spans where I don't remember anything.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
You
So
know?
do you think? Oh, so after you passed out when you woke up, did you go outside and check the newspaper to see what year it was?
No, I went inside the safe and got another and hit myself again with more meth. Because the cycle of meth is you stay up
Right.
and then you crash
So how long were you out?
at least a day, maybe
Wow.
more. And what's crazy is here's all my friends. Do you think they came and checked on me?
Absolutely not.
Heck no,
They
they
were
were
too
busy.
busy
They
tweaking.
were tweaking, man.
Yeah.
Doing deals. So and I think that all the drugs was just another way for me to deal with my reality of what I was dealing with,
You
my
were just coping.
homosexuality and just getting high. I was just out of control, man. I really was, and there was no one there to tell me nothing. One of the reasons I lived on the streets is I didn't want anybody to tell me anything. And today I think that's why a lot of people do live on the streets. Young people is I don't want no one telling me. I don't want no one telling me nothing. I want to come and go as I please. If I don't want to take a shower, if I don't want to comb my hair, if I want to do this or that, it doesn't matter. I can do whatever
Wow.
I want.
So what at this point in your life, you're what, like 18?
About 18, 19 maybe, somewhere around there.
You said it gets worse by the time you're 20, right?
Yeah.
21. So what happens next?
Well, that was part of it, and then it was just back on the streets, just getting deeper into homosexuality and some of the practices and things that, one thing, about homosexuality is it's full of hate
Really?
and anger.
I've heard that it's a violent.
I have when I became a Christian in 1987, and the first year of my salvation, my 3 best friends died of AIDS, and I got to talk to each one of them before they died.
Wow.
And 2 of them were like, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to give AIDS to as many people as I can.
Wow.
Where's the love, man?
Gosh, man.
I thought this was love. And we love everybody. No, it's full of hate and bitterness. So for me, I was very bitter. I was very cynical. I was very critical. The only time somebody wanted to be around me if I had something to give them.
Mm-hmm.
So like I had a lot of drugs or there was physical giving, but just to be around me, who I was, no one wanted to be around me, man.
Like who you were as a person,
As a
nobody
person.
liked.
Because I was a very violated, angry, hurt individual. And you just hide that. You know, people have vices that they do to hide their pain.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right?
do you feel like in today's culture, people that are homosexuals, do you feel like they may be going through the same thing and that's why, you know, they've chosen that path? Or what is your take on the modern day, you know, because I would have to say, you know, it's been what, like how many years?
35.
So things have
years
changed a
almost.
little bit.
Just a little
So
bit. Yeah.
what I'm asking is,
Yeah.
based off of your life growing up a homosexual and people now, is there much change, or do you feel like...
Well, I think at the core of homosexuality, it's probably the same. It's just based, and this might upset people, it's just based in perversion and self-love. How are you going to make me feel good? I want to feel good, you know? And, I mean, I've heard non-religious commentators talk about homosexuality, you know, and they're not a Christian, and I mean, they're not married. They're just out doing what they think, but there's just something, they say there's something different that drives it, you know? I mean, if somebody's with the girl, they're with the girl. There's a relationship. There's some normalcy in what they do in their intimacy, but there's something that's just odd or drives somebody who's involved in homosexuality. So I think socially, homosexuality, there's always a big push to get it to be accepted. And I think, you know, for face value, a lot of people say they accept it. But I think if you were to really just delve into and interview people that say they do, in the inside of who they are, they probably know that something's just, yeah, I accept it because I don't want to make any waves. You know, so I think socially...
I don't want to be canceled.
Yeah,
Right?
That's crazy, yeah.
You know, I think that homosexuality, and you touched on it, I think homosexuality even in today's world is driven by hate, is driven by resentment, it's driven by you know, the people that I've come across that are homosexual, or even people that were heterosexual and now are all of a sudden exploring that world or in a homosexual relationship. You know, they've been through things with the opposite sex, right? So a girl with a guy, and there was a violation, right, of some sort. And I remember Marty Carnegie once, so one of our the pastors, came and did a revival here, and he said he sat down next to a girl in a train, and they started conversating. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you know, this and this, and she says, I'm lesbian, and I'm just like, he's like, well, you know what? If you don't mind me asking, what drove you there, right? Why are you a lesbian? And she said that she started breaking down, and she looks at, and they were in a train, and she looks outside the train, and she starts crying. And she starts telling Pastor Marty Carnegie how at a very young age, different men started violating her.
Yeah.
And she said, you know what? I decided in my mind that I would never let another man violate me or use me. And that's why they turned to that lifestyle. I don't want to go too long, but in one of my previous jobs, we had this one girl in our training class, and she was married. She had a son, everything like that. And she's, you know, by the end of that training, she had divorced her husband and was now exploring a homosexual lifestyle with a girl that she had known from another state.
So there's a term for that in homosexuality. It's called latent homosexuality. So I've known men over the years that are married, they have kids, and in the middle of their marriage, what seems to be going great, their wife finds out that they're sleeping with a man. So the woman's like, that ain't happening.
What do you think drives people to that point?
You know, I don't know if I would be the expert on that because that's not my story or my experience. But what I would say is it's just people are dissatisfied. If there's some kind of violation, you know, like Daniel was talking about the girl, she was violated. You know, and in my experience, you know, because of my homosexuality, I'm always looking at it because I always, you know, want to have an opportunity to be able to share my story with somebody that may be dealing with that. And the two things I've found is there's just some kind of violation. There's some kind of violation, and it's a lot of times it's a single mom. There's no covering.
So there's no father there to
there's
protect the children.
There's no father there to cover. You know,
but you know what?
And there's no protection.
You know what's also interesting is, and again, just talking to people and observing is, when you talk about a husband leaving the wife for another man, or the wife leaving the husband for another woman, you have to incorporate in there pornography. Pornography in the sense of, you're gonna watch, you know, and if you read a lot of the serial killers, that's how they started, with pornography, right? So what would they see? They see regular, you know, a guy and a girl having sex, and they would get turned on, right? Couple months go by, and you're just like, well, I want to see something different. Couple months go by, well, sooner or later, they're watching stuff, you know, that you would never think. So I think that plays a role in it also, is whether that husband or that wife is dabbing in the pornography, and therefore fantasies start taking over, right? In the sense of, hey, my wife doesn't satisfy me anymore. Now I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah, I
and
think
doing
there
that,
might
so.
be some truth to that, but I don't personally think that if there hasn't been some kind of violation in a man's life as a young boy, or there isn't some kind of generational history of violation, that somebody who's been heterosexual their whole life is just going to jump up and say, hey, I'm going to go sleep with a guy. I've never seen that personally, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I've talked to a lot of people, and I've never seen that. You know, there's always something that's happened, you know, in a person's life.
It's
that
very
draws them.
It's very common. There was a traumatic experience in their life that was a seed that the devil planted, and that later on it grew into this.
At least that's what happened with me.
It's very common, you know. So it's not saying that it's every case, but it's one key factor.
You know, and especially, you know, Daniel asked the difference between back then and homosexuality today. So, you know, I think it's probably, what's the word I want? It's changed somewhat, because when I was involved in homosexuality, I can remember stepping outside of gay bars, and there would be guys on the ground, bloodied and half dead, because homosexuality wasn't accepted. So there'd be guys that would go to bars, and they'd find guys coming out of the bars, and they'd beat them up. It's called queer bashing. And nowadays, you don't hear about that. I mean, not that it's not happening. It depends on probably what part of the country you're living in. You know, but so now it's socially acceptable. So it seems like it's more prevalent. You know, and you know, I was talking with my daughter the other day, and my wife, and I was asking them. I go, so, what do you think the difference is? You know, when I was growing up, I couldn't really come out to my mom and say, hey, Mom, I'm gay. Actually, the way my mom found out is there was a guy I was with. I was 13, and he was like 35.
What?
Wow. And I told him I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. And my mom and her husband owned a restaurant. And he came in the middle of rush hour and said, I'm gay, and I had an affair with your son. And I'm like 13 years old. And my mom's like, what? You know, and her husband at the time, he was, you know, beer drinking, pool playing, hang out with the bikers. So, you know, that didn't go really good.
So what back in the day did they, I mean, that's pedophilia, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't.
Well, there's a lot of pedophilia and homosexuality. So that's why.
Yeah.
That's why, and this is my own experience. I believe that there are older men, okay, and they're driven by the devil to find moms that have no covering over their kids' lives, right? So there's no dad to protect. So it's like there's a vulnerable situation.
That's right.
So you have just like in anything in life, you have the teacher and you have the student. So you have the teacher in homosexuality. They see an opportunity, you know, and because homosexuals really get along with girls well, the girls will let their guard down. Well, this is a nice guy. Come on over, hang out, yada, yada, yada. You
He's
know what
relatable.
I mean? Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, and it's like, I'm sure in the back of their head, they're like, yeah, well, this guy's gay, but you know what? We get along really good. You know, so what happens is they let their guard down.
Because that's human nature. You don't want to be left alone.
No, you don't.
You know what I mean? You're gonna look for acceptance, and if you find it with somebody that's giving you that attention, you'll be more easily like, you know what?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because the same girl, you know, I would ask her, I'm just like, you know, like what made you switch from being with a man to now being, you know, with a girl? You know what I'm saying? I remember one time she came in late to work, and then later on she kind of told me, oh, it's because I was with her and yada yada, right? But one of the things is she's like, the reason I'm with her is because I feel accepted.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to
feel loved.
I feel like my body, like I can be with her and she's not gonna judge me.
Yeah, she understands my emotions, and we speak the same language.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen that too. Is that when somebody's been violated, they're either ultra one way or ultra the other way. You know, and you know, with a guy, you know, and it's sort of weird because, you know, guys, they, you know, they're violated by guys, and so some of them are real macho or butch, and then some of them are real feminine, and it's the same thing with lesbianism. You know, here's a girl who's been violated by a man, so they act like one. So to me, it's just like,
it's almost
I get it. You're
yeah.
trying. It's like a protection thing, and I'm not trying to slight anybody. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of just stuff there, and my heart really goes out to people who deal with that. Having dealt with it myself, and just the struggle in life, and trying to be accepted, and you've got to bend who you are to be accepted. I mean, it's really a difficult thing to have to deal with and live that way. And what happens is, after a while, this is how I am, so I'm just going to make the best of it. You know, but I think for a period of time, when somebody gets involved in it, there's a struggle. Like, is this what I should be doing? But I feel loved. You know, this person understands me.
So
they're not going to hurt me.
So you're in your 20s, 21 now. What changes? Like, when is enough for you in your life at this point?
So when I moved when I was telling the story how I was got an apartment, I had a job, and I lost my job, and one of my roommates said, "Hey, I'm moving to Marana, and you want to go?" And I'm like, "I just lost my job. I don't have a place. Why not? Number 14 on the city. You know, it's like, let's go, man." So I just threw my stuff in there, and so I had broken up with my boyfriend. So, you know, there might be some people listening to me and saying, "Well, you know what? You weren't really gay." I was married to a man before married to a man was popular. Okay.
Because it wasn't legalized, right?
It wasn't legalized.
It was something that
but
was...
we had rings.
So how were you married?
Huh?
How were you married?
Oh, we just went and bought each other's rings and said, "I'm committed to you."
Oh, okay.
Within the gay community, that was like how you were married, right?
Yeah,
at that time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I just needed a break. So this was like my break. I'm going to go to Tucson. I'm going to get off of drugs.
You know what's crazy? You're saying that a lot of people say, "I'm going to go to Tucson and start over."
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
that's
you
like
know,
a very common
the
thing
word
for
Tucson
Arizona.
or Phoenix sounds like a boring place. What's
Yeah.
good what's happening in Tucson?
Even
What's
in
in Tucson?
Even
man?
in the movies,
Yeah,
like,
'cause
we're
it's
going to
the
go to
desert.
Arizona and start fresh.
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
So you moved to Tucson and you wanted to start fresh.
I wanted to start fresh, so I'm living with this guy. We were just friends, you know. There was nothing going on there, and so I got a job. I worked at a welding shop. This was in Rito, right outside of Marana, and got a job there. Then I moved into town, and I got a job at the Plaza Hotel, which is the Aloft right now. It's on Speedway and Campbell. So this was probably about 6 or 7 months after I had moved to Tucson, okay, or to Arizona. And by that time, my boyfriend he came from California, moved back in with me. So, and it was crazy because at that time I had money in the bank. I had a car, I had a motorcycle, I was getting along. Things were like pretty good compared to what they were before. I had a job, I had a place, you know, so everything was going pretty good. So, but at my job, there was a mom and a daughter that were Christians, and they would always invite Danny to church. Now, I was the nasty.
Wait, who's Danny?
Danny was the guy I lived with. So we both
Your friend.
my
Your
boyfriend.
friend.
So
Okay.
we both worked at the same place. So they would always invite him.
Wait, not your boyfriend.
He was my boyfriend. Yeah.
Oh, he's
The
So
guy
we-
that moved from
so
California?
So the guy who moved to California moved back in with me.
Oh, okay.
That was
okay.
Danny.
We both got a job at the Plaza Hotel.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a mom and a daughter who went to our church, the one we go to now, and
Are they
would
still there?
Huh?
Are they still there?
They moved back east somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So he's like, who are they? But so they would always invite Danny to church. And the reason they would always, because I thought about this, why would they invite him, but why wouldn't they talk to me? Because I was rude, mean, nasty.
Bitter.
No one wanted to talk to me. And I would tell you to go.
Kick rocks.
Exactly, yeah. That's a good term, yeah. I was trying to think of
Keeping it
how to
PG.
say what I was going to say without saying it.
Keeping it PG.
Here, just say a word and I'll bleep it out and make it sound like you said
Oh,
it.
thank you.
1, 2, 3, go.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to bleep it. Pastor.
No, just really quick. We'll get back to your story, but I used to work with this older gay guy at Circle K about, I don't know, maybe like 12 years ago. And he was always so rude and mean to the customers. And I pulled him aside one day and I was like, hey, man, why are you so angry all the time?
Yeah.
You know, like try just relax, man. Smoke a joint or something, you know? And so he's like, you know what? You're right, David. I'll try. And I remember he'd come in the morning and his name was Philip. He passed away, I think. But he would come in the morning and I'd be like, good morning, Philip. And he'd be like, how the hell are you? That was him trying to be
was him,
nice.
Yeah.
How the hell are you?
Yeah.
But anyway, continue with your story.
So,
So you were mean, bitter, and that's why
mean,
they didn't
bitter, nasty.
invite
No
you.
one talked to me, you know. And maybe it was because I would steal everybody's tips off the table and the waitresses wouldn't get their tips. Maybe that has something to do with it. But
Maybe. I don't think so,
maybe.
though.
Yeah. They never knew.
Oh, well, they do now. You owe some people some money.
Yeah, really. But so they would always invite Danny to church, to a concert, and they would talk to him about Jesus. And I'm like, I was like, yeah, whatever, man. So one day, now remind you, I really look back. I think they were praying for me because things started just transpiring in my life. My life was still the same. I was still working. I still had my place. I was with Danny. I had car. I had money in the bank. But there was this deep dissatisfaction with life. I had everything I wanted, but I was completely miserable. I was 20 years old at the time. I was 20 years old, coming on 21. So one day, they invited me to church. So I was like, yes, I'll go.
Because you were waiting for it.
I was like, it's like, it was almost like God was involved in my life way before I became a Christian.
At that time, did you feel like church or Christianity was against your lifestyle and like?
It wasn't really even an issue with me because I was living my life and this is how I live. My mom, we grew up in the East Coast, and she was like, if you don't like it, her saying was go stick your head in a bucket. So if you're from the East Coast, you've heard that saying before. She was like, so that was who I was. I don't care who you are, man.
Go stick your head in a bucket, boy.
Yeah. So that's how it was, you know. But so they invited me, and part of me was like, well, you know what? Maybe this girl likes me. So I didn't want my boyfriend to know because I was empty.
Oh, was this the girl with the balloons in the car?
No, that was a different one, man.
Oh, okay.
So you remember that? You remember that?
Oh, that's the story you told us on the street in the
For the last
the
year?
Valentine's
Oh,
Day.
you got a good
Yeah.
memory, man.
Yeah.
That's good. But so this girl they invited me to a concert.
But was this at our church?
It was at our church.
Okay.
It was a Saturday night.
On
Saturday Night
Veterans?
Live. No, it was on in our church building right now.
Oh, okay.
Irvington.
So this was 87.
So you
Okay.
said you didn't want Danny to find out.
I didn't want him to find out.
So when you thought this girl likes me, was that because you were like,
You were trying to switch it
I
up a
was
little
just
bit?
trying to.
because you were so miserable
Were you
that
trying
you were
to go
just
from
like,
a
You know, it's
hot
like,
dog to a
it's like I had everything, but yet I had nothing. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people
yeah,
that
so
live
might
like
as
that.
well try something, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I was totally confused, and So I was like, well, this girl's giving me some attention. Because I think deep down inside,
It was the attention.
I really wanted to be normal, whatever you would call normal. But in my era, in my timeline of growing up, the way I was living wasn't normal.
Yeah.
You know? And no one wants to go through life not being accepted.
Right.
So rejection is a terrible thing to feel. So anyway, so they invited me to the concert. And it's crazy. I don't remember much of stuff before that point, but I remember everything that happened that night, and it's been almost 35 years. I remember the bands that played.
Who played?
There was Vida Nueva, and I can't remember the other group. Lord as Heck was in the band. Phil Makuviak played the Congos. And I think George Menchaca played his saxophone. And Brett Buss was wearing a wig. I don't know if you guys know Brett. You know Brett Buss?
Yeah, I remember
He was
him.
wearing a wig, and he was James bound. And he was bound in his sin. So, but I remember that, man, like it was just yesterday.
So
And
that was 1987.
that was 87. And James Wilkins was the door director.
Oh, wow.
And he preached the Saturday night scene. And I remember him saying, look, God will give you a brand new start. I didn't know anything about God. I had never read the Bible. Actually, there was a short stint when I had just turned 18. I joined the Navy. That lasted for like 150 days because I decided I wanted to shoot meth again. So I remember having a little New Testament and trying to read it. And I'm like, what does this mean? And I remember throwing it away. You know, I said, this ain't for, because I'm trying to do something, you know.
Yeah,
I'm in the Navy.
You're searching for something.
I actually joined the military to start new. I'm like, I gotta start something, and I screwed that up too.
So is that what that tattoo is?
That's
the anchor?
my tattoo. Yep. So it's a very ugly tattoo. So don't zoom in on it. No.
Let's get the zoom camera in.
Yeah. But so that night, I remember James Wilkins preached, and my hand shot up.
Oh, wow.
It was 9:35 at night. April 27th, 1987. And if you go into the fellowship hall, you walk in, there's a pillar here and there's a pillar there, right? I was sitting in front of the right pillar. So I remember all this. And I remember my hand went up, everyone stood up, and he goes, okay, if you raise your hand, come forward. And it was like, I was sort of like acting like Brett Buss in the video. It's like, or in the skit, I wanted to move, but it's like my feet were stuck. And James looked at me and he went like that. And I went up. And I prayed. And I think this is real important if you're listening to this and you're struggling with homosexuality or you're questioning why you're feeling this. So I went and I talked to Stuart Redwin, who was the associate pastor at the time. And I told him what I was involved in. And he said, this is what you need to do. He said, you need to be militant and you need to be in church. So, I mean, I didn't really know what militant meant. I had an idea, which means I just need to make up my mind and just stick it out, right? Mm-hmm. So that night I went home. Danny was at the house, and I said, look, I became a Christian tonight. You need to leave. I had all my drugs.
Wow, just like that.
I jumped in the dumpster.
Radical.
I jumped in the dumpster, and I remember digging a hole because I knew if he saw me throw my drugs away, he was going to go get them out of the dumpster. Mm-hmm. So I dug a hole. I threw my triple beam in there. I threw my rigs in there. I had a little stash of weed. I threw my bongs, my pipes. I threw them in the dumpster, and I covered them up. And from that point on, I've served God. Was it difficult? Yeah. I mean, there was times I can remember, especially like the first 3 months of being a Christian. You know, you ever see those comic books where there's like a demon with big claws, and it's like they're grabbing and they're ripping and tearing. That's what my mind felt like for the first month. I mean, I can remember at work and just grabbing my head, man, going, what is going on? But I knew instinctively that whatever was going on in here, I had to be in church. I had to pray. I had to read my Bible. No, I never grew up in church. So it's like I would see other people do it. So I'm like, okay, they're doing it. And I can remember meeting guys and they'd been saved for 3 years. They were Christians. I was like, whoa, dude, you are like a star, man. You've been a Christian for 3. Here I am a couple months and I'm trying to get through all of this. Wow. You know, my mind is just being tore apart, my emotions and, you know, and it's like.
The Bible says be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Exactly.
So that was God working, and then your sin was combating, you know, what God was doing. So you probably felt that.
Yeah.
being pulled both directions.
Yeah, it's like I didn't really understood. All I know is that when I went to church, I just felt better. And it took me, I was about maybe 3 or 4 months after that decision. I remember that there was a revival service, and one of our evangelists at the time was named Jorge Nunez. And I remember him praying for me, and I was delivered. I mean, it's like I went.
And how many months was this after you gave your life to
About
Jesus?
3 months.
Okay.
So I had still.
So it doesn't happen right away.
No, I mean,
Right?
it doesn't. I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
I mean,
It takes
21 years of living a certain
something
way.
like that. No.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible says
Yeah.
you must be born again. You know, when a baby's born, they don't know everything.
Yeah.
They're still relying on their mom or dad. They're crawling. They got to be fed. You know, but after a while, that baby learns how to walk on his own, how to talk on his own, how to feed himself. You know, and it's the same thing.
Well,
you
not
know.
only that, it's like you're coming out of a hardcore lifestyle. We're not talking about, you were doing, you were addicted to weed, right? And you got saved. No, we're talking about a homosexual lifestyle, drug addiction, hardcore drugs. You know what I'm saying? Violating your conscience. You know what I'm saying? You're coming up with 20 plus years, or, let's say 16, because at 3 or 4, it first happened. 15, 16 years of just violation and literally going against your own nature. And all of a sudden you want to change.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. As a Christian, now that you've become a Christian and you broke up with your boyfriend, you got rid of your drugs and stuff, how did you know that the lifestyle that you were living was wrong, or why is it even wrong? That's a question that a lot of non-believers ask. Why
Yeah.
is it so wrong to
Yeah.
be a homosexual?
So for me, I mean, I instinctively always felt that it was wrong, although I was enjoying the way I lived for the time I lived. But I think instinctively inside my heart of hearts, I just knew that it probably wasn't the best way to live. So I was at a place in my life when I became a Christian, it was like, this is how life is. This is what life's given me. So I'm just going to flow with it. So, and it was crazy because it was at that time is when God reached down. You know, you hear stories like, well, you must have been a heavy drug addict. You were laying on the streets in the gutter, man, and God reached down and saved you. And so I wasn't like that. Everything in my life was going good. I had everything I wanted. But it was at that time that God chose to reach down and touch me.
You know, just to talk on a little point on that, you had worked in your life to get everything, and only in order to realize that you needed something.
Yeah.
The moment you had everything, you finally realized, wait, there's something missing.
And did you find that full satisfaction?
Yeah, when I gave my life to Jesus, it was like the lights went on, and I wasn't raised in church. I had never read the Bible. You know, I had prayed a couple of Our Fathers and Hail Marys growing up, you know, as a Catholic.
What did you feel?
I felt, it was interesting if I can remember, you know, I went to church, I was sort of excited because I was going, and then I was just like, oh, it's a new experience, I guess, or these girls, you know, they want me to come. It was almost like they accepted me, they wanted me to go with them, you know, so there was some of that. But as the night progressed in the Saturday night scene, it was like I went in feeling like, yeah, to like there was this weight. You know, if I could draw a picture, just picture some guy just curled over in a little ball and just all of this weight holding him and pushing him down. And when I prayed that prayer, that was instantly gone.
I hear that a lot.
It was just like gone. And what that is, you know, as you grow as a Christian, you realize, well, that was the weight of my sin. Because sin is a heavy taskmaster. People think sin is fun. You know, when somebody goes and smokes their first joint, did they plan on being a cokehead? When somebody picks up their first beer, do they plan on getting DUIs and being in and out of rehabs? No one ever plans that. But what happens is when we sin, we become in bondage to it and it starts weighing us down. It starts weighing us down. And that's why people, their only release is, well, I'm just going to do it some more.
It's interesting that you say when they were pulling the altar call, you felt the weight. It's almost like the moment your sin was confronted, you realized it was an issue.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like God, I mean, of course, he knows all and plans all, you know, in your life. You know, he has a plan for your life. So he allowed you to finally realize that weight that's been on your life for 21 years.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand what it was, but when I got up off the altar, it was like I was 5 years old again. I was innocent. You know, and one of the greatest things that I felt when I first got saved is I didn't have to hide me. I'm like, this is who I am, man.
Yeah.
Praise God. I'm alive. I'm clean.
So
I don't have to hide anything.
Do you feel that like right there and then, like, were you delivered from homosexuality, or was that a process?
He said it was 3 months.
Yeah, it was a process. I mean, I didn't involve myself in homosexuality at all. You know, and that night I prayed. I mean, I had struggled when people would bring it up. I can remember one of the pastors getting up there, one of the visiting pastors, and said, people aren't gay, they're miserable, queers. Mm-hmm. And when they said that, I was like, who the heck does this guy think he is? Now, if you say that, I'm like, well, yeah, they are miserable. I don't know if that would be the best terminology to use, but there's a truth to that, you know. But it really struck me wrong. So that was still, while I wasn't practicing and I wasn't involving myself in that demon spirit was still on me.
It's not going to let you go that easily.
No, it ain't going to let me go.
No.
You know, because, you know, especially that I prayed, the devil wanted to pull me back and say, yeah, see, Christianity doesn't work, man. Once you're gay, you're always gay. You were born this way. That's a big lie, man.
So after those 3 months, you never felt an attraction to men again?
I'm free, man.
Really?
Free.
And I asked that question because I know a lot of gay people. There's a lot of gay people in my family, and it's such a controversial thing, you know, where it's like I witness to them and stuff, but then they'll always ask me that question, how do you feel about homosexuals? And I'm like, well, you know, a lot of people have this misunderstanding too, that they think that God hates gay people. Like, no, God doesn't hate gay people. He hates the sin.
Exactly.
He hates the fornicator's sin. He hates, you know, he hates homosexuality, the sin, just as much as he hates the sin of alcoholism, or, you know, we as human beings, like, you know, we put wagers on sin, but there is that stereotypical Christian that I believe the devil kind of throws out there for the world to kind of scare people away from the truth.
I think Christians over the years have maybe made a bad name for themselves when it comes to dealing with
agree.
Well, you're gay, stay away from me.
Yeah, I definitely
like
agree
I can
on
remember
that.
my wife was telling me, I think she was telling you the other night, where there was actually people in our church that would say, you're going to marry him? Don't you know what he was? So there's that mentality. But, you know, we mature and grow.
Right.
You know, so we can mature and grow out of dumb ways of thinking.
Well, the church has matured and grown. Has grown as well. You know what I'm saying? So
I mean, the church in a whole.
How did your wife take to that?
She always tells me, she goes, "You're my miracle."
I want to ask you something.
Awesome.
I want to ask you something, because when you mentioned your wife for the first time, like after your salvation, your wife said something. You know, you said, "Oh, my wife said this." I want you to tell that story because of how you met your wife and how, where your life is now as, you know, a married husband with children. Like, that is a miracle in itself. And I really feel like you should take a moment to just share with us like that story.
Okay, but before I say that, I want to just say one thing. You were saying you have some family that are homosexuals, or I've even ministered to people that have dealt with that, and they say they still have an attraction. And if somebody's listening and that's you, it's because you haven't drawn the line in the sand. You've got to draw the line in the sand, and you have to make a decision. If you will make that decision, say, I'm going to live for God, will you be tempted? You know, being tempted isn't sin. Jesus was tempted. But it's when you act on that temptation is when it becomes sin. So you have to draw that line in the sand, and I think that's what really helped me be free, is the night I prayed, I made a decision. I drew the line in the sand, and I'm like, I'm not stepping over that line. And I knew as soon as I did, it would be done. And I messed everything up in my life, and I wasn't going to mess this up. Because I had never felt the love of God. I never felt acceptance. I never felt where people who didn't even know me would let me in their house and I could eat dinner with them. And they were my friends and they didn't want anything from me, you know. So how I met my wife is she became a Christian about 6 months after I did. So we were sort of in the same litter mate, if you would. We got saved around the same time. So we would go to Bible study together. She had 2 children. We'd go to Bible study together. Actually, it was at her house. We'd hang out, you know, we'd fellowship. And back then there was a restaurant called JB's. And we'd go to JB's all the time or Carol's on South 6, and we just hang out. And we were good friends. And, I mean, we were best friends. I would hang out with her. There was no, like, you're just my friend. She had 2 kids, you know, and I started growing fond of the kids, and we just became really good friends. So one day, where we would talk on the phone all the time, that's back when they had phones with cords that would connect into the wall. You know?
And you bought those really long ones so you could move.
Yeah, I could walk all the way around the house, man.
Yeah.
But I remember her telling me, you know what, Paul, I like you. And I'm like, I like you too. And she goes, no, I like you. And I'm like you like bread or something like that, you know?
Like
so
bread.
I sort of knew what she was saying.
What does that mean?
Like bread.
You know,
Like, I like bread, you know, like.
But so she was my best friend. She really was. And I mean, we had talked about anything and everything. And so for like 2 weeks after that conversation, I remember during that conversation, she's like, you know what, just forget what I said. Can we still be friends? And I was like, no, something has changed here. So I had made a decision, you know what, man, this is my best friend. I'm never going to have a friend like this. So I asked her to marry me.
Wow.
And 9 months later, we
Wait, so from the
maybe,
moment
maybe I rushed too
from
quick
the
through
moment that she told you that she liked you, when did you ask her to marry you?
Well, so about 2 weeks had passed. We hadn't talked.
Mm-hmm.
So I was jonesing, man. That
So
was my
things
bud,
got
man.
awkward.
You know, some guys have best friends that are guys, and we were buds, man.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and I mean, I had friends that were guys. We'd hang out, but
Yeah.
you know. So about 2 weeks after, there was Bible study at her house, and I was like, you know what? I had made a decision. I'm going to ask her to be my girlfriend. So I remember the night I asked her, and she started laughing at me. She just started laughing, and I was like, "What did I say, man?" You know. So she said yes, but when I asked her to be my girlfriend, I had already decided that I wanted to marry her.
Oh, wow.
You know.
Wow.
So for those young men that are dating in the church or considering dating, be best friends. That way, there's no fronts up. You know who they are. They know who you are. Get to know them, be friends, and then pop the question, man.
Key word though is build the friendship.
Yeah.
Then go into the relationship.
Exactly.
To get married.
Because you know who they really are, because there's no
Exactly.
fronts.
A lot of guys
Yes.
and girls, I would say,
Yes.
nowadays, they see somebody and they have interest already before they're even friends. And then they already have this
Preconceived notion.
preconceived notion that, oh, I want to ask
Without
them out.
knowing them.
And they don't even know them.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, you know.
Yeah.
Be their friend.
So I had asked her to be my girlfriend. I think about a month. My wife, if you interviewed her, she'd probably say the story is totally different, and her story is probably more accurate, you know, because women don't forget certain things. But so I think it was from the point I asked her to be my girlfriend and started courting her. 9 months later, we were married, and it was 1 week before June conference. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to get married, come back, and we're going to get sent out, man. And
So-
it was
Yeah.
till 23 years later we got sent out and pastored, man. So
9 months, not 9 years.
Yeah.
Single man.
So you're a pastor now.
yes.
So you have that title of being a pastor. That's awesome. So I have a question, and I want to ask this question because I know that a lot of the people watching, they probably have a lot of questions, but because these are questions that I get asked all the time that I don't know how to answer. So God obviously doesn't hate gay people.
No.
Neither do Christians.
No.
You know, we don't hate gay people.
No.
But why is it wrong?
Why is what wrong? Homosexuality?
Homosexuality, according to the Bible and God, because a lot of people, you know, it's their lifestyle, it's their everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the Bible doesn't differentiate on certain sin. It's all sin to God. Mm-hmm. Sex outside of marriage with a girl, sex with a guy, it's all the same to God. There's not like these places in hell. Well, you live this way, so the temperature is going to be 500 degrees hotter over here
Or how
for
they
you.
say, yeah, there's a special place in hell for you.
Yeah. So that's not. It actually breaks God's heart because God didn't create hell for people. You know. And as you were talking about your relatives, I was just thinking about the heart of God, as it breaks God's heart. You know, because of what it does to a person psychologically, emotionally, because God created us for so much more. I mean, think about it. We're created in the image of God. God's awesome. God's wonderful. He's good. He doesn't hate sin. It's just like if you have a kid, you're not going to hate them for what they do. You hate what they're doing because of what it's doing to them.
That's right.
I mean, I have 6 kids now. I have 8 grandkids. And, you know, there are times my kids do things that I don't like that they do them. And it's because I realize what's going to happen if they continue to do that. So my heart breaks for them, or I want to try to direct them from doing certain things, because me not growing up a Christian, I realize if you continue to live a certain way, this is what the outcome's going to be. So for people, well, you know what, God's judging me and God just wants to control my life. Well, he's a loving father. So any loving father, if they see their kids starting to do something or they're heading in a specific direction, they're going to do anything that they can to stop them from doing that, because they understand the outcome. So I think God's heart breaks when he sees people living in sin. It breaks his heart because he loves us. You know, he really does. You know, if somebody's a homosexual or somebody's a heterosexual, it's really irrelevant to God. No, one thing that does happen is, depending on your lifestyle, there's a greater consequence for living certain ways. You know, somebody who's an alcoholic, they get DUIs, they're going to be in and out of prison. They might end up in prison for 20 years for manslaughter. You know, so there's certain outcomes of certain behavior. You know, so in that aspect, there is greater severity for certain lifestyles.
I think one thing that comes to my mind too, and just to add to what you're saying, you know, there's sin, but the Bible clearly states when you commit sexual immorality, you're sinning against God and yourself and your body.
Yeah. So there is
there's another layer there.
There is a little bit of severity to that lifestyle.
Right.
You know, I keep on coming to mind is Romans chapter 1, where it says, because they refused to put God in the place he is, God, they started to worship the creation rather than the creator. So that talks about self-love. It's all about me. Look at me. You know, we see our emotions, people's emotions, you know, and if you deal with homosexuality, your emotions and how you feel is at the top. It's about how I feel. It's about how I've been violated, and you know, I deserve extra, and it's okay if I'm living a certain way, and people need to understand that I'm hurting, and God understands that. So when we remove God from the picture, and I think that's probably in part why we're seeing such a big social push for homosexuality in our country, is because God is being pushed out. You know, if you have a hole, you take something's going to go in the hole. If you empty the hole, something's going to go in there. So if we remove God from the equation, something's going to fill it.
That's good.
And I think that's what we're seeing in our nation. You know,
What's
is
a
that
vacuum?
people need to exactly.
It's exactly what it is.
Where people would get some satisfaction, they'd get joy, they'd get fulfillment out of having God in their life, or some kind of form of moral compass. You know, not everyone's in our nation has ever been Christians. Our nation, there wasn't one time where everybody here was Christians, you know.
It's very good.
But there was still some moral compasses that people would live by. So there's a constant push and fight to remove that moral compass. So when that's removed, the vacuum, like you
it's
say,
a vacuum,
and things just get filled up. And I think that's what we're seeing that, you know, in our
there's
country.
a void, and you know, like you said, it's about self, right? It's about selfishness.
Yeah.
So as we push God out, we're focusing on us. What do we want, and what do we like, and what do we think is You know, what
Yeah.
feels good, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it. And
Yeah. So, you know,
So-
if somebody's a homosexual and listen to this, I just want you to understand something, and that is that the reason we feel that way or we're selfish is because there's this thing in human beings when we're hurt like a wounded animal, we fight back. Or we go like that, we put our guard up. You know, at the root of any type of sinful living is just selfishness, really. You know. So when I gave my life to Christ, that was broken. I stopped just thinking about myself. And, you know, God started to change my heart. And, you know, the Bible says we must be born again. And in 2 Corinthians 5:17, it says, he who is in Christ is a new creature. Old things are passed away, and behold, all things become new. So what happened to me is I stopped looking at myself. I stopped looking at my own hurts. I stopped looking at the things that had happened in my life, and I just started looking to God. And when I did that, it was like these things, the selfishness, the attitudes, the bitterness,
Right.
the cynicism, you know, just the hate for life just started dropping off. You know, and like that scripture says, you become a new creature. So it's a becoming. So I'm going to be becoming a new creature until I die or Jesus comes back.
Right.
You
That's
know,
good.
You know, that's a very good point, you know, for people to grasp, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take
No.
a lifetime of just, you know, because we're not perfect, man. And I want to take a moment to say thank you, you know, for sharing this story, because as much as it is hard for people to come out and say, oh, I'm gay now. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are new to church that probably don't know your story. And I know people are watching this podcast in the church as well as on TikTok and as well as on Instagram and YouTube. So there's a lot of people that are going to hear your story. And for you to boldly just come out and say, you know what? Because the thing is, there's a lot of people that hate when you tell them they're doing something wrong. And
that's in our nature.
it is. You know, I hate when my wife tells me, hey, don't do that. I'm like, come on.
Why are they always right, man?
You know
Have
what I
you ever
mean?
wondered that?
Yeah. I hate it. Even though she's right,
Yeah.
I still hate it, you know? But that's the same thing as the Spirit is that, you know, people don't like it.
Yeah.
And for you to be bold and say, you know what, this is my experience. This isn't something that I'm just grabbing from a book and saying, don't do that.
Yeah.
This is saying, this is my story. You can't
Yeah.
argue with personal experience.
You can't.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think that's great that you took the time to break it down for us. I'm sure there's more that you could break down in the future when we have you on again. But I want to say thank you, Paul, for just taking the time to really just bring it home and say, you know what, this was an issue. God solved that issue, and he can do the same for you.
He can.
If you are enjoying this episode, this podcast, hit that subscribe button, that like button. Follow us on all the listening platforms.
And if you have any questions or if there's anything that maybe wasn't clear for anyone, feel free to drop a comment and we'll do our best to try to answer your question.
And, you know, if just to say this, if somebody is struggling with this, there's a lot of confusion involved in it. I just want to encourage you just to turn to God, man.
Yes.
You don't have to be in church. Like part of my testimony was I was on the streets, Hollywood Boulevard. I was in front of the Wax Museum on Hollywood Boulevard, which is still there. And I prayed a prayer and God touched me. And I think it was at that point where my journey started. It brought me to where I'm at today.
Wow.
And I just want to encourage, if anybody you're listening, God can help you. And he loves you, and he can really do a great work in your life. You just
Yes.
got to let him, man.
Yes.
You just
Amen.
got to
Yeah,
let him. Because
because-
that's what it's all about at the
Absolutely.
end of the day is it's about Jesus and what
Surrender.
he can do.
Amen.
Homosexual for a number of years, living on the streets, strung out on drugs, became a Christian, married now for 30 years coming up. In June will be 30 years, 6 kids, 8 grandkids.
Pastor
And
of a church in
Pastor
California.
of a church in California.
Apple Valley, right?
Apple Valley, and there's people there that love God, man, and we're excited, man.
And it's all because of Jesus.
It's all because of
Yes.
Jesus, man.
Yes.
He
It's
gets
never
all
too
the
late.
glory.
It's never too
Yes.
late.
Exactly.
And that's the thing too, you know, because it was that one time when you were in that phone booth where you read that track, you said that sinner's prayer, you open the door to God.
Exactly.
God was already reaching out. And that's all we have to do is just open that door. It's not, we don't need to polish ourselves to come to Jesus. We need to come to Jesus and let him polish us.
Exactly.
You know, because a lot of people, I hear this all the time. I'm not ready to do this. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't fix myself up. I was jacked up.
You know, I think God will meet you where you are. That's what it is. God will meet you where you are, no matter how deep the hole is where you are. God's
you don't have to
faithful,
stop
man.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just seek God diligently with all of your heart. And eventually, the closer you get to God, the more he reveals things to you. And that's how God changes you.
You know, and even if you're not able to, you're in a bind or you're like feeling down, just say, you know what, God help me. God help me. The Bible says that God will not turn his arm is not shortened to save the lost.
Yes.
So I prayed that prayer. I had no idea about God. I left there. I didn't go to church. I didn't get all holy and religious. I went out and got high. But it was that prayer that opened a door. And later on down the road, I think it was just 4 years that God met me and God changed me and touched my life. And he can do that for anybody.
Yes.
You just got to cry out to him, man.
You know, what you said there goes to that scripture that God's word does not return void. You know, that the word of God was planted in your heart that day, and it took 4 years for it to grow. And then finally, when it was time to...
Yeah. I almost think me praying that prayer and all the deeper I got involved in my sin was almost part of me getting saved. Because I went really deep. It was almost like the devil's like, oh, you're going to pray? I'm going to pull you down and I'm going to try to destroy you even more. But the devil's a fool because he didn't realize, you know what? Yeah, well, he might be getting into all that. But like that story I mentioned about me, my eyes rolling back in my head, I look back and that's the grace of God, man. Because God has a plan for my life.
Well, the Bible
and God
says,
kept me alive for that plan.
Well, the Bible says that what the devil meant for good, Jesus.
No, the devil meant for evil.
What the devil meant for evil, Jesus meant
Does the
for
devil
good. God
mean
meant for good.
things for good?
It's my doctrine and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do right now is you're listening to us, and I'm really glad that you are listening to us. I don't know at what point you came on, but regardless of how you're living or what you're involved in, God loves you, and Jesus can help you right where you're at. So if you'd like to pray a prayer, if you want God to help you, I'd just like to lead you in a prayer. So if you just bow your head right where you're at, close your eyes, and just repeat this prayer with me. Just say, Lord Jesus, I'm a sinner, and I'm sorry for what I've done. I believe you died for me, and I believe you rose from the dead. Come into my heart. Show yourself to me. Help me and change me. And I thank you that you love me and died for me. Amen. If you did that, just keep seeking God. Find a good church. Throw some comments. If you're in the Tucson area, throw some comments. We'll try to get a hold of you, help you out.
Yeah. And if you are a Christian already watching, listening, share this with somebody. Put this on your platform, your social media.
Yes.
Get this out there because people need to hear this. We will catch you guys later.